Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. It is time for the Spellbinders Hot Foil Kit of the Month. Normally I see the reveal of the kit and promptly forget what's in it. This time I know what I'm in store for, so I have a solid plan. Let's dive in. Alright, here is the kit. Let's go ahead and get it open. So I for sure know what the hot foil plate is, but I don't remember what the actual foil is. So let's find out that part first. Oh my goodness. This is super sparkly. Okay, now I remember. All right, and then the foil plate this time around is a background plate, and it is bubbles. Lots and lots of bubbles. So I will be honest, I was very hesitant when I first saw the reveal of this plate because how often am I going to use bubbles? But I have a great idea today to combine this plate with some other Spellbinders product and come up with a great scrapbook layout. Alright, I did pull out a whole bunch of extra products. Here is our current kit of the month. This was last month's kit, and I think I might want to use this one too because the technique that I have in mind, we could use mixing and matching. These two are ones that I bought on sale when I started hot foiling, and these are sentiments that work specifically for scrapbookers. So I'm gonna pick and choose between these two sets. Not too long ago, I also signed up through my local scrapbook store the Spellbinders press plate of the month. So these can be used to also hot foil, but today I think I'm going to use them to be press plates. Now the hot foil plates are thicker and they cannot be used as press plates. So if you're going to choose just one system, I would go with the press plates. Alright, so I'm going to use some of those, and I brought this one out because this reminds me of a tire track in the sand. And as you notice, we have a theme going on here with all of these bubbles and fishing net and sea creatures. Yes, I am going to be telling a beach-inspired story. We went camping recently, and I'd say more of a campcation because we slept at the campground, but we went out and about and did quite a few things. And one of those things was drove to the coast to the town of Cannon Beach in Oregon, and we visited, this is called Haystack Rock, and we hung out at the coast town all day. So that is the story that I'm going to be telling today. Let me start some hot foiling, some press plating, and then I will come back when I have those pieces ready. Before I could actually start creating my pieces for this layout, I did have to pick colors. So I pulled out my photos, and yes, my photos have a lot of blue in them. So I could have gone about creating a monochromatic layout using blue, but I wanted to help things pop just a little bit more, so I went to color theory. Color theory is the idea of how colors behave together. And I started this color wheel based on the Concord and Ninth colors because I used their inks and cardstocks the most. And if we have blue on this side of the color wheel as one of the primaries, with yellow and red being the other primary colors, you can start to mix lots and lots and lots of colors. Now the colors are already mixed for me because they're an ink pad, so I chose colors that represented the gradients in between the primary colors. So if you mix yellow and red, you know that makes orange. So orange here would be Clementine in Concord and Ninth. If you add more yellow than you do red, you're going to come up with more of a peachy color. If you add more red than you do yellow, you're going to come up with more of a rusty color, for lack of a better word, and this color is called pimento. And the same applies to all the other colors on the color wheel. Now there's different ways to represent things on the color wheel with lighter shades and darker shades and so on and so forth, but this is the really simple idea. Now, if we get to the color theory part of the color wheel and how colors behave together, if you start off with one color and you look directly opposite the color wheel, that is called the complementary color. And those two together tend to be more vibrant, they pop more. So when I'm looking at my photos with lots of blue in it, I am going to want to include some orange. So when we choose the opposite color, that is the complementary color. When we choose colors that are the neighbors of the opposite color, that is called a split complementary color scheme. And that is what I'm going to do here today. So I have chosen clementine and I have chosen pimento as a yellower orange and a redder orange. And then I've added in some yellow, and then because nature has some green, I do have that. So I've broadened my color scheme from a basic blue and 2 shades of orange, and I've added in some colors that neighbor in the yellow range. So I've got these as my color scheme for this project. We're going to do some watercoloring as well as creating the pieces with the hot foil and the press plates. Here is how my elements came out from the press plate. This one is that right side up? This one is super subtle, so I could have, oh, there you go. You can see some of the texture in there. I could have inked that one more time before cutting it out. And that is totally doable with the press plates. And I did do multiples of the greenery to be able to make a visual triangle. I have a whole bunch of pieces made. So we've got 2 with this month's press plate, 1 with this month's foil, and then 1 with last month's press plate. These pieces are not going to be used as is. I'm going to turn these into embellishments, and I'm going to do that using a heart-shaped nested die set. I also have a whole bunch of sentiments done. The other thing I did was used that stitching die to create these tire tracks on the scraps from doing my sentiments. So I'm going to cut these out. One thing that I wanted to mention about doing this technique where I'm using a foil plate to press ink onto cardstock. Remember I said you can't use the foil plates in the Better Press machine because these are too thick. However, you can use the technique of embossing with a die in order to do this impression. So I will ink it up, I will put my paper on top, I tape it in place so it won't slip and slide on me, and then I use a sandwich in my die cutting machine that will emboss with a die. If you don't know how to do that, I will link you up to a video where I talk about lots and lots of die cutting techniques that aren't necessarily die cutting. Alright, I have got all of the pieces cut out from the various patterns, and you will notice that some of them even are cut off the edge, and that's okay because I will find a way to tuck it or hide it with another element and that'll work. Alright, I'm going to set those aside in my tray and my photos, and I'm going to make sure none of this is in the splatter zone for watercoloring. Okay, I say watercoloring, but really we're going to be doing some ink smooshing, or as Vicky Booten likes to call it, ink kissing. So I have my glass mat, which I'm happy to work on today, and I've got all of my ink colors that match my paper colors that I was using. I am going to start off with wheat, which is brown, and I want to create some sandy reading zones down at the bottom where I can put those track elements. And I'm likely to kind of undulate my ink smooshing lines as best as you can control this kind of thing. So let's start with that. So put some ink color down on a smooth surface. Go ahead and take a water bottle and add some water. And then we're going to pick up that color. Now we could, well, I'm getting started already. We could have done this directly on the plastic sheet, and that would give a more solid coverage. This way I can add bits and pieces to where I think it needs to go. And we can always layer this up. And I should note that I am working on the Spellbinders alabaster cardstock, and it's kind of nice to work on a tinted cardstock instead of a pure white, and that gives you a little bit more base to add the color to. Now when we're talking about this alabaster has a brownish pink undertone to it. That's going to help darken the brown that I'm adding. It will slightly shift the other colors, but it's not so much that it will totally change the color tones. So while I'm here, let's go ahead and try the other method. I'm going to put this directly on here, add my water. This one tends to mist everywhere, so I do try to corral it a little bit to prevent too much smushing. Now the tricky part is I didn't mist all of the area, so I want to be a little careful with my kissing, and this is where that Vicky Booten kind of rock and gentle tap and kiss comes in. So we're getting more puddles of color this way as opposed to blotches of color. So you can try it different ways and see what you like best. I'm going to add one more puddle this way. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. Now, because this is a plain cardstock and not like a mixed media paper or watercolor paper, you can't work it too much because it will start getting too warped. And if you're rubbing on it at all, it can start to tear the paper. So with this one, you really do just want to kiss it down. So I'm going to clean up and then I can change colors. All right, I did heat set this so that I can move on to other colors. If you don't heat set it first, you'll get more blending of color, and it just depends on the look you want. Now, in terms of order of using the other colors, all of these colors have a little bit of yellow in them, so I'm going to use yellow next. And so far, I'm really pleased with how this is working on the Spellbinders cardstock. Some cardstocks, and your mileage may vary, will just soak up the water immediately, and it doesn't give you time to move it around, so this super smooth cardstock is a much nicer finish for doing this technique on. So test out your cardstock with whatever you have to see how it behaves. Okay, the next color I'm going to move on to is Creamsicle, because it's not a heavier weighted color than the yellow, meaning it's not going to be a huge contrast or a huge dark and light difference between these two shades. So I'm going to use this one next. And then I will go ahead and move on to a little bit of green and just a little bit of red to add some accents. So let me go ahead and do that and then come back. All right, I was thinking about the red and I decided to pause here and think about some design and placement. I did pare down some of my sentiments. I'm going to end up using, I think, 3 of these because I typically work in clusters of 3 for the visual triangle. I do have all of these to choose from. Now, I need to think about where my title's going to go, where my journaling is going to go, and where my clusters will go. So I'm thinking that I will probably just put the title up here, which will just be Cannon Beach. I might add a little bit of a subtitle or just a caption to point out Haystack Rock. So if I've got that and that, I will likely put my journaling down here. So then how do I want these track elements to go? And you know, if these don't work out, I can just ditch them, but it was an idea. All right, if I start tucking, I think I like this photo on top better. I didn't think about how much negative space, empty space there was in that photo in particular. Okay, here's where we've got some kind of crashing of design elements. If I do title and journaling, we've got a diagonal going this way. And if I've got my photos arranged this way and with the embellishments laid out as is, we've got a diagonal going that way. It's not something I tend to do with this kind of X mood going on. So here is my final thinking. I am pulling my journaling into this corner to tuck it in here so that I'm pulling everything tighter together so I don't have that X going on. I will probably drop my title a little bit over here and make Canon overlap the photo and keep Beach off the edge. We'll see if there's enough space for that. I think I'm going to keep my tire tracks all in the same diagonal direction because at first I thought I was going to crisscross them and so on to kind of create more of that random beach look. But I think design-wise it'll work better if I'm kind of aiming towards this focal photo. And then I created my clusters so that it does create a nice visual triangle. The journaling will be within that visual triangle, as is my face and the rock, which I may still go ahead and add a subtitle to. So I've got my clusters mostly built. I will cut off some of these tire tracks and maybe add a little strip in here. I will stamp my journaling lines probably here and then maybe extending down to here. And then I realized I haven't used any of these hearts. So can I fit them in here is the question. Okay. You know what? I think that's good. So I'm going to use this tape now that my clusters are fairly in place. I'm going to use this tape to, I might need to get more tape to go ahead and connect all these clusters as single pieces and kind of think about where I want to add this red. So I just want to add a little bit of red here and maybe up around here. A little bit of red here and here. And then a little bit of red probably here and here. So that is the goal of all of this. All right, I've been working at this a while. The lighting has shifted behind me and gotten a little bit dark. With this new craft room setup, I'm not sure how much the natural light is going to affect my filming light, so we shall see. But here is the final project. You notice I did what is a very common item for me to kind of rein everything in with the doodled border. I got my title on there with the date and made sure I put Oregon so that it's clear where the city is. And then I got all my journaling on there. So here is a bit of a closer look. So there we go. That is my project for this month's Spellbinders Glimmer Hot Foil Kit. So that is it for this time. I hope you've enjoyed and gotten something useful out of this episode. Perhaps you saw some goodies you'd like to pick up for your own crafty stash, or maybe you want to try some ink smooshy watercolory goodness. Either way, I want to thank you so much for being here today because I know you have lots of options out there in the crafty world. And I will be back soon with more crafty videos for you. And until then, I hope you have an artful day.